morning. Good morning, Terry.
Who are you?
And everyone. Yeah, who am I? That's a good question. I'm Mike Halibran. I'm the code leader of the Esther class, the one that doesn't show up. And Mike Halibran. And if you're watching online or going to be added, we are going to go into Esther chapter 7 today. Thank you all for coming. I am going to need a lot of help this morning for a number of reasons I'll go into. So please raise your hand, help out. I'll try to make sure I repeat everything so those online can hear your valuable comments. Chapter 7, the game changer. Before we get into it, how do I go to the next slide? Here we go. There we go. That's right. We want to thank Brian Driver for week after week. He asked me, "Are you doing that this week?" And I said, "No, not this week." But he has done an awesome job. I have watched every one. And thank you, Brian, for all your good work. Hopefully I can do half as well. I also want to thank Seth. Come on, everybody. Did you see him working up here before? Man, he puts in a lot of time, and Kendall's not here, and I had such a cool picture of him, too. He will not really truly appreciate. So the reason I wasn't here is I got COVID. I think I'm fine now. I'm still recovering. I usually don't get up before 9:30. So I am really tired right now. But we'll see if we can make it. My teammates at work know that I usually cough a lot till about noon. So I expect a little bit of congestion this morning. So please, I appreciate you putting up with me. And then I won the fantasy football championship, which has not been announced yet. Brian?
We had it in the bulletin.
Okay, yeah.
It was announced.
I missed that. Well, I wanted to get my credit. And I will share half of my winnings with all of you.
Does that mean we all get to go halfway to Disneyland?
That's right. And yesterday, though I spelled it wrong, because I just finally saw the final, my second granddaughter was born just yesterday. And that's a true picture. That's 1 minute old. She's born at 3:01. We literally got this picture at 3:09 yesterday afternoon. Yesterday when I went to actually study for this class and get it prepared, I got the phone call. We're going to the hospital. Come pick up Olivia. So a lot of my preparation is to the wayside. But again, I beg your forgiveness on that. It's Elena Dogny Halibran.
Oh, wow.
Dogny being my wife's name, and she just saw that today. And so we shed very happy tears. So we're going to do a review as Brian does, but I don't have the voice to go through each one of them, so I need your help. And I'm going to I use a lot of 70s TV shows to help us to figure out what has happened in the past. So as a review, what happened in chapter 1? Queen Vashti, played by Carol Burnett here. And what was the king doing? Big party, pulled in everybody from the Providences, all the military leaders by Tim Conway here. And he had a big party. He's trying to drum up support for his great military campaign. He calls Queen Vashti to be presented to everyone, and she says no, and she gets banished. And the king did, he pulled everybody together, said, what should we do about this? And they put a royal decree that pretty much says, as a husband, you're a master of your wife, and she has to do everything you say, and if she doesn't, she will be banished likewise, which was not a nice thing for him to have done. But it sort of starts out on what kind of ruler is he going to be, which was a despot, and to reverse many of the human rights things that his father and grandfather had done. Chapter 2. Esther. So the servants who you're going to find out are really in the know what's really going on in the kingdom. It's the servants. They look at the king. He's not feeling very happy, and they decide he needs a new wife, and he sort of agrees. They pull in all the beautiful women, and they select Esther as queen. My next 2 slides, what also happens in chapter 2? So we get introduced to Mordecai. Find out that he's a Jew, and he's a good servant of the king. Probably doesn't agree with the king on a lot of things, but he does his job. He finds out these 2 nasty characters here are going to do a plot against the king. He finds out. He tells the king, and this is significant. This plot is, doesn't happen. And Mordecai, we see what kind of character he has. This is going to be a significant event happening later on in the book. Foiled, that was the word. Chapter 3. Haman. So he's probably the 3rd, 4th biggest character, somewhere in there. And Haman is an Agite, and he's becoming very powerful, but he is an evil, vile, Danny DeVito type character, right? And he demands respect, and he sees Mordecai not giving him the respect and kneeling down to him. So he finds I'm going to kill this guy. Then he finds out he's a Jew, and he goes, not only am I going to kill him, I'm going to kill his family, his heritage, everybody. He just goes off board. And being a little two-faced, as Haman is, he turns from Danny DeVito to Radar O'Reilly and convinces the king to put out an edict to kill all, be able on this day to kill all the Jews throughout the entire kingdom of Persia, all the provinces. What kind of king is that? If you really look at King Xerxes, he's already taken away human rights. I mean, he even signs the edict to allow and puts a signet ring on it to allow this type of annihilation of a whole people. And as we know, that between the chapters, especially 1 and 2, militarily, he's just a disaster. We go on to chapter 4. And we have this great communication, not one-on-one, between Queen Esther and Mordecai. They can't talk directly, so they have to talk through a servant who sends back messages. Well, you tell the queen, and you tell Mordecai. So, of course, I had to use Bob Newhart because his telephone skits are classic, right? And what does Mordecai tell Esther? About the edict.
Yeah, it tells her about it. She didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Up until that point, she'd been a little bit isolated in her role as the queen.
Right.
And so he has to tell her about it, and then he's trying to encourage her to do something about it.
Right. And what's her initial response? Russell? No, not me. I haven't even seen the king in 2 months. Why me? And then what does Mordecai say? Class? For such a time as this, Who knows? And if you want to save your skin, fine. God will raise up someone else. But this is your time. So very, very, very nurturing, very good communication. And so she goes, she agrees on condition of everybody praying. You know, we see God in the book of Esther a lot, and she fasts, and she goes ahead and does it. So she goes unrequested to the king and goes before him, and he puts out his scepter and accepts her. And then he asks, "What do you want, Queen Esther? Up to half my kingdom," right? Has anybody ever said that to you? I say that to my kids all the time. "What do you want? Up to half my kingdom." They look at me like, "Mom controls everything. You ain't got nothing." Well, tell me anyhow. So she goes, "I want you and Haman to come have dinner with me." And Haman goes home and brags to all his friends, "The queen asked for me particularly, and I'm going to go and have dinner." But she doesn't give it the information right away. He goes, what do you want? What do you want? And he goes, "Well, I tell you what, come back again tomorrow night, and I'll let you know." So building up the anticipation, which was really wise of her. In the meantime, Haman builds a pole. A long pole, I don't know. How long is it? 75 feet, because he plans to kill Mordecai. He doesn't even want to wait till everything happens with the edict. He's going to do this now. He is feeling full of himself.
Hey, Mike.
Yes?
We talked a little bit in that chapter. We saw Haman's, I think we're calling it bipolar maybe, but he went from pure joy at being selected to join Esther and the king at the feast. But as soon as he saw Mordecai,
Yeah.
how he was filled with rage because Mordecai would not give him any honor whatsoever. And so he had to go home and gather all his friends and family and explain to them how great he was. And then at the end of it, it says, they say, "Well, build this gallows, this pole, and then you can go to the feast with joy." And we just talked about the kind of irony there, and what we really saw of Haman's character.
Yes. Oh, and if you thought chapter 5, he was up and down, let's wait till chapter 6, which Brian did a great job with last week. So the king cannot sleep. He decides to read the book of Chronicles. Who does that? But he does discover that he never rewarded Mordecai for saving his life in the plot. So he figures he needs to do something. He gets up early in the morning. He goes in the court. He says, "Who else is out there?" "Oh, Haman is there." "And why is Haman there?" He's going to go to the king and ask. He wants to kill Mordecai. But before Haman can say anything, the king says, "Who can I reward? And how can I reward someone that I really, really want to reward and honor?" And so Haman thinks it's him. Goes through this whole elaborate scheme of a parade, a horse, a robe, everything. And he goes, "Okay, that's a great idea. Do this in honor of Mordecai, and I want you to do it, Haman." So there's this I really think this is going to be the greatest day ever. And then this turns around, and he has to honor Mordecai. Russell? Okay. All right. So goes through that, goes back and sees his friends. His friends say, "Oh man, God, seems to be on Mordecai's side. If he is, you don't have a chance." But he gets whisked away, and he goes to the second night of Queen Esther's dinner. So this is all in the same day. He wakes up thinking he's going to kill Mordecai. He made all the plans the day before. He instead is honoring them throughout the streets of Persia and goes off to this dinner. And now we're on chapter 7, which only has a very few verses, so that's why I decided to take a long time to do because we're going to be done in the next 10 minutes here. So does anyone want to help me read the first 4 verses? Thank you, Ed.
Now the king and Haman came to drink wine with Esther the queen. And the king said to Esther on the second day also, as they drank their wine at the banquet, "What is your petition, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Even to half the kingdom it shall be done." Then Queen Esther replied, "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given to me as my petition, and my people as my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. Now, if we had only been sold as slaves, men and women, I would have remained silent, for the trouble would not be commensurate with the annoyance of the king."
All right, thank you. Wow. Why is this so courageous for Esther? Before I give you some of my thoughts on it, let me open that up. Why is this so courageous?
Because she hasn't been invited and she could be killed.
Okay, well, she'd been invited to this. This is her party, but yeah, that was before.
Oh, sorry.
But even now, no, you're fine. Why is, even though he's here to making this particular request of save my life, why is it so courageous for her to still speak up?
Because it's her people that they want to destroy.
Okay, and that's interesting because she doesn't really know what King Xerxes' opinion is of the Jews. I mean, for all she knows, he may be completely behind this edict. Yeah, these people need to exert. She knows what Haman's thinking through Mordecai, but is the king really behind this edict, or has he been duped also? She has to be thinking of it. So I think that's part of it. Chris.
Because somebody's going to die here. She's putting the king in a position where he has to make a choice.
Yeah.
His right-hand man, who he trusts absolutely,
Yeah.
and the queen, who he's in love with.
Yeah. He's a prince of Persia, as we learned in the last, chapter, that, I mean, he's a high honored, you referred to him as right-hand man. It's her against him. Wow.
She is questioning his authority.
She is going directly against an edict that he has signed. His kingdom rule is a little bit, again, that's why I was bringing up a couple of those, pretty much being questioned by everyone. And one of his first rules, she is coming in saying, this is wrong. You did a wrong thing. This is bad. So she is absolutely going against that.
And she's a woman.
And that's really important, again, going back to Chris's comment, because he's, hey, it's a man and what he thinks with Haman and the king, and you may be the queen, but you're still
The queen.
Brian.
And she's adding to that, she's having to word things in such a way so that the king doesn't think that he's being accused or attacked of doing something wrong. She has to point out to him the wrong thing he did without letting him think that she's pointing that out to him.
Yeah, very, very tricky.
This is the first moment that she reveals that she's Jewish and that these are her people. Now, I think her servant knew that, but not the king.
Yeah, the king would never have known that.
Surprise, like, oh, I chose a Jewish woman to be my queen.
Yeah. Who else is going to be surprised? Oops. Yeah. Okay, so she's not staying in her place, as we brought out.
Hey, Mike, let me just share, Phyllis online says she trusted God. She knew he was with her.
Yes.
So that's very.
Absolutely. Yeah. It gave her the courage to do what she did, where, it looked like it's something that was going to be very tenuous. Okay.
Remember that the Jews weren't being passive here at all. Mordecai, once he realized what had happened, he went sackcloth and ashes, which is characteristic of Jews and their custom
Yeah.
all the way back to Job, which is even prehistory. And so and of course, in Jonah, back in the whole
Sure,
city,
sure.
it was not only it was mourning, but it's penitence to God. It's not penitence to a man or anything. This is penitence to God. So you're mourning and you're bringing it to God. Now, Esther, once she acknowledged that she needs to be a part of this, she goes into a traditional. The 3 days of prayer are very traditional,
Mm-hmm.
and also everything that we know up to this point. The Jews succeeded if they took it to God,
Mm-hmm.
but if they did, anytime they acted without God, the Jews did not succeed.
Right.
So we're seeing God, completely in control here.
Yeah. And what you're saying is it's completely obvious that Mordecai, if you're really paying attention, and Esther were Jews
Right,
because of how they responded as soon as that edict
right.
went out.
And being a Jew, but also the king, when he becomes aware of Mordecai again when he cannot sleep, he becomes aware that Mordecai is a Jew now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's building to a progression where he has to make a choice, but there's only one choice to be made, here.
That's a good point. So earlier that day, well, from the sleepless nights, he would have learned that Mordecai was a Jew already, because he mentions that in the morning. And he's like, oh man, Jew, where do I know that? Oh yeah, I just put an edict to kill all of them. And here I'm honoring a man that's a Jew. And it's not going to be but 12 hours later that he's going to find out his own wife, who I think he really likes. I don't know if I'll say love, but really likes, thinks a lot higher of her than he did of Queen Vashti. And he's going to find out now that she is also a Jew. Okay. Why was asking the second night of what her request is to the king better? Why was it better that she didn't give it to him the first night, but the second night?
Well, she had the king guessing.
Okay, keep it guessing.
She had him thinking about it. She had him focused.
Okay. Russell, and I always remember what you said on the cruise when we studied this. This was a big point that you had here. Do you remember? Do you remember? Man, that's why you teach so much. You get
I
it.
think it created a curiosity.
Yeah.
I think he is very curious now, and endearing
Uh-huh.
to her.
But it kept him focused on what she wanted.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, part at dinner. It was focused on what she wanted too. Yeah.
Excellent. Carol?
I said this before, the first meeting is just putting all the characters in the room and getting to know each other and
Okay.
looking at their relationship and who the main characters are. We don't know that Haman knows that she's queen and the relationship between the king and the queen, and
Okay.
he doesn't know the relationship between the other two characters.
Right.
We know the first meeting, you don't get anything done. The second meeting, the third meeting, then you're getting into why we're getting together, who plays what role.
Mm-hmm.
So, the second night was fun.
Let's see what I said, because I'm very curious too. Okay, it allowed for God to do something. I don't know if that was part of it. The Spirit was not working, and she just pretty much told her to wait one more night, that God himself needed to do some things before she actually asked. So it set the stage. Brian even alluded to maybe his sleepless night was due to the fact that she didn't tell him, and he was like, I wonder what Queen Esther is going to ask for. I can't sleep. So allowed for God to work. He now knows, and I think he needed to know, that Mordecai was also a Jew. We mentioned curiosity was now at a peak. And I think this was more, she needed to get her courage up too. What Carol was saying, I need to see a little bit more of what's going on, and maybe I needed a night more of prayer or fasting or whatever she did.
Go back for just a moment there.
Go back. I can do that. Technology's wonderful.
Well, you're good at that. Do you think when he brought up about Mordecai that he reflected on who told him? Who told him about the attempt to kill him? Who was it?
Mordecai.
It was Esther.
Yeah, Mordecai told Esther, and Esther told the king.
Oh, okay.
And there is a link here.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
All right.
Nice.
Now, I honor Mordecai and I think a lot of Esther. I wonder, is he beginning to find, if he's beginning to put some puzzles together himself?
Pieces together
Pieces.
of the puzzle. Yes, you're probably right.
Just wanted to have that piece.
Nice. That's a good one.
I don't think Haman knows, though.
Oh, no.
Hey.
I think this is just an amazing thing, what happens here with the second banquet. I think his jaw dropped wide open.
We're going to talk about Haman next, so I'm going to hold off, but that's a good one. First, why she throws in this statement of, if the edict was just about being sold as slaves, I wouldn't even have bothered you to it. I would have accepted that fate. Why did she put that in there for the king to hear?
I think it was true.
Okay,
Because they were already out of Israel.
Yeah.
They were already scattered.
right.
So being sold as slaves is like, okay, that's no big deal. We can get out of this.
They were probably just a little bit above being full slaves, but they were not in their country. They were not Persians. Interesting, yeah.
She wanted the king to know that she and her people were available to be useful to him. That she's saying, you can make us slaves.
Right.
We would be happy to serve you, but do not destroy us. I think is what she's saying to him.
Yeah.
And that again, it goes back to, she's making this as soft as possible so the king will be open to what she's saying.
Yeah.
She's using phrases like, we were sold into this. She isn't saying, you, king, wrote this edict.
Right.
She's saying, we were sold into this. And we're willing to serve you, but please don't destroy us.
Yeah. And if your two examples of being a Jew is Mordecai and Esther,
Right.
gives you a lot to think. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Okay. Let's see what I thought. I think she wanted to point out the atrocity of you're going to kill a people because of rumors that they're not serving you, but yet, and bowing down to you, but your example is Mordecai and him. It's just, I think, really pointing out the atrocity of how do you go from murder and murder of everyone, right? Annihilation of a
How many
people.
people were there?
There are thousands throughout the providences.
No, over 70,000 men.
70,000?
Well, it's more than that now. This has been 70 years.
Mm-hmm.
So close to 70 years, so we're 100 to 200,000 people. And this number is large.
Yeah. It's a good group of people. Very similar to Egypt. I don't know what I meant by who put him in this position, but we'll move on. I think she also wanted to honor the king, as Brian was saying.
Haman put the king in that position.
Oh, that's it. Thank you. It's really early. I'm still on my first cup of coffee. Haman, yeah. Who put you in this position? You didn't do this yourself. It was Haman.
And the advisors, all of the advisors, but I
Yeah.
think Haman was the point man.
Absolutely. And it just shows humility, and that's what Brian was bringing out, her humility and honor for the king. We're here to serve you. I don't know where you got this information. If only you didn't say you're going to kill us or allow us to be killed. Let's take a look at Haman. What's going through he's having worst day ever. Can we say that? And we haven't even been to the end. Worst day ever. But he finally gets to this dinner party. The previous night he was at it. It went well. He has no anticipation that it's not going to go bad. So finally, the day is getting better. I'm having a glass of wine with the king and queen. Finally, the day is getting good. He himself was probably wondering, I wonder what the queen wants. I've been thinking about that all day long, too. But what is she going to ask the king? And I always think that Haman would have thought, too, if he heard, I'll give you anything to have your kingdom. And being Haman and knowing him, he would have been saying, boy, why can't she have said that? Why can't the king have said that to me sometime? Do you have anything, Sue? Okay. Then, what is she talking about? Remember how she doesn't really come out and say, she never uses the term Jews. She's just referring to herself, and he's going to have to figure out and clue in. What is she? Oh, wait a minute. She's talking about me. Is this about my plan? Is this about me and what I said? And then finally, can this day get any worse? Oh, and the answer, for those who read ahead, the answer is yes. So let's read the next section. Brian, you got that?
Verses 5 through 7. Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther, "Who is he and where is he who has dared to do this?" And Esther said, "A foe and enemy, this wicked Haman." Then Haman was terrified before the king and the queen. And the king arose in his wrath from the wine drinking and went into the palace garden. But Haman stayed to beg for his life from Queen Esther, for he saw that harm was determined against him by the king.
All right. Wow. So now he doesn't have to wonder if it's about him. He knows definitely where Queen Esther stands. So we're going to play the game. What are they thinking game? Let's go through it. The king, what is he thinking right now?
Hopefully he's beginning to figure out that he needs to be a little more principled and not swayed by every advisor that comes along, because what we've seen from the beginning is he has no principles and he just basically follows the wind of whoever's speaking in his ear at the moment.
Yep. And to win people over, which would make him pretty mad, right?
At this point, from his comment, he doesn't relate it to his edict. He just thinks there's something else going on out there, that somebody's trying to kill his queen.
Yeah. Okay, he might not.
Because he said, who is it? Who's
Yeah, who is doing this? Yeah, he may not have thought, but he knows that that Queen Esther is serious about this situation. Interesting.
I think who's undermining me?
Yeah, yeah. Only I could do that
Right.
if I wanted to, and I don't want to. So who wants to do this? Okay, Brian.
I'm wondering too if at the point that she says it's Haman, if he realizes, okay, Haman has put me in a very tough spot here. You know, because maybe all at once it came to him how foolish he had been in agreeing to sign the edict, as Ed pointed out, without really, delving into, is this really wise to do?
Right.
You know, if he thinks about it, he's made to look foolish here because he has not been wise in leading his king. And I think some of the wrath may be part of that.
Yeah, yeah, very angry. Yeah, it was my wife who made up the point that Haman was like a Radar O'Reilly. Just sign the papers here. Just sign them. I'll take care of everything. Just give me your ring. What else? What else is the king thinking?
Well, I'm seeing him as a protector of his wife.
Yeah, he's showing some principles there.
Yeah, I just feel like he's trying to protect her and then also her family.
Carol.
I think he's going out to the garden to get more information. What's really going on here?
He wants
The
to.
fact that it was a small meeting, it wasn't in front of all the princes and all the people.
Right.
It's very smart so that he could do what needed to be done and not be as embarrassed.
Okay. Yeah, he wanted to think back. Why is this happening? Ed, did I see you?
I think it must be starting to dawn on him that as king, whatever he does can't be undone. And so he's realizing that he's painted into a corner, that he's between a rock and a hard place.
That is right.
He
Yep.
has a tremendous problem here.
He has a big problem. I saw Russell and Sue.
I think he's really realizing who Haman is.
I
think he's beginning to realize not only this person who's undermining him, now he understands why he was so shocked that morning that it was Mordecai.
Yeah. He could.
Thought it was himself. This guy's after my position, even.
Yeah.
He feels very betrayed.
Yeah.
I think that's the key right there.
Very. The betrayal.
Because he's with the two people he trusts the most.
Yeah.
I mean, and he doesn't know really which one to trust yet until the next few verses seals it. Because he goes out there, he's totally alone now. I mean, he's never been this way. He's always had something to fall back on. And now he's got to he's an action, and he doesn't know who to trust.
Doesn't know. Okay. Nice. Great comments. Okay. What are they thinking? Esther. What's Esther thinking right now? Or feeling? Carol.
I think she is feeling a little bit relieved that now she's told the king, she has gotten it off her chest, and now it's out of her hands. So she's got to trust God, have faith that he's going to lead the way.
Yeah. Not only relieved, I think she is physically drained. She is done for. She probably really hadn't slept for days, because of this. Not only the king, and she put everything into this, her prayers, her heart, and poured herself to do this, as Brian says, and phrase it exactly the way, right? She also has to be wondering, did it work or not? I'm relieved it's over, but now I'm waiting for the verdict. Keith.
Basically, she laid all her cards out on the table. Hey, what are you gonna do now?
Yeah. Later cards on the table to find out, did she win? Winner take all? Or is she losing the jackpot? Ed.
Well, this is where your next slide is the Jeopardy music. That anticipation, that waiting
time yesterday.
Same thought I had was, she's at a point of waiting. She doesn't know the king's decision on this yet.
Mm-hmm. No, she doesn't. Absolutely not. Russell.
I think she reflects what Mordecai told her. For such a moment as this, or for
Such a time as this.
this is it.
Yeah.
I get it. I'm in that moment. Yeah.
There's nothing else I can do.
This is
Now I need to just collapse and find out what is God going to deliver me or not. Wow, that's a powerful thing for all of us to think. When we put our cards on the table for him, when we step out on faith, we're at that point of, is God going to deliver?
But see, that's what faith is. That's exactly what it is for such a moment as this. And that's what faith is with any of us.
Yep, it is.
That's when we make that, we have the choice that Esther had. We could either act or not act. But for such a moment as this, there's no turning back.
No turning back. And we may not be in a situation where we have to save an entire nation, but when we step out on faith, put everything out for God, whether it's inviting somebody to church, whether it's sharing our faith, whether it's doing a good deed, forgiving somebody that has wronged us. We could go on and on about what we do and God has asked us to do on faith. And then there's that period of time where we don't know, but we have faith that God will save us and deliver us. Chris?
And we can't forget that the king had many women,
Yeah.
and what he did with his previous wife. So she doesn't really have any assurance.
Mm-mm. No? Yeah.
But I think she has confidence because she, and as Russell said, 200,000 people have been praying and fasting for 3 days, and she has come with this, exquisite request.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she's standing there confident, though exhausted.
Yeah, she collapsed though. She went laying on the couch. Yeah, but confident. Yeah. And now I'm just going to sit back. What you're saying, sit back, and now let God take over. Which is also a part of faith, right? I'm just going to, okay, I did what you wanted, God. Now I'm going to fix it myself or do something more. Now, she laid it out, and now she's waiting for God. Do you have anything more, Brian? All right.
I think it's interesting that she called Haman vile.
Yeah. Vile, I think his version was wicked. Yeah. The vile. So that's more of a personal.
My Bible reads, this wicked Haman is our adversary.
Wow.
And our enemy.
Huh. That's very good. What version is that?
The Tyndale translation of the Living Bible.
Yeah, makes it communal between her and the king. That's interesting. What is Haman thinking now? How is he feeling?
What am I going to do next?
What's that?
What am I going to do next?
What am I going to do now?
I think, if it was a man's world, he would be walking with the king wherever the king was going to try to persuade him. Okay, she's talking nonsense, she's talking foolishness, whatever, but he stayed behind to request her forgiveness. Or
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah, maybe I can still manipulate her. I know I can't change the king when he's in his rage. Okay, I can see that. Brian?
I wonder if the prediction that his friends and wife had given him at the end of the last chapter was now coming to his mind. Because she said, if Mordecai is going to be honored this way, if he's a Jew, he must fall.
Yep. And it's not just last chapter, it's only an hour or so
Right.
before in our timeline, because chapter 6 and 7 are one day in the life of Haman. Haman's like wanting to have that that little magical spell where you can go back 24 hours and start your day all over again. But he's not going to get that chance. What else? Haman. Okay. What's God thinking?
All within my time.
Happened exactly the way I knew it would. I mean, he was the orchestrator. Brian mentioned a couple of times, oh, this is such a great story. Shakespeare couldn't have done this. But it's not a story. This was live events. He didn't give them the script that they were supposed to say. God had to work through people's own ideas and actions and behavior and reactions. But he orchestrated, directed it all in a way that was going to come to the salvation of the Jews just when you think it couldn't get any worse. So God is the only one here not surprised what's going on. Brian?
Just a comment from Phyllis watching online about Haman. She was saying he knew he had gone too far, and I think that he believed that the king had already decided his fate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think she is right. Carol?
I don't know if this is true or not, but God knows what motivates us, what things hurts us, what all of the things that make a person, and what better person to discipline Haman than God. And he did. If you look through, okay, he built the gallows, he's up and down bipolar, whatever. And then as soon as he's done with the gallows, he has to march through the streets honoring Mordecai, which was horrifying for him. And then he goes to this banquet, and he is definitely hit by the 2x4, if you will.
Yeah.
By God.
2x4, God. Was that bipolar supposed to be a reference to building the pole? What was going on in the mind of Brian? That should have been. What would Brian do? Okay, let's finish up chapter 7. I'll read this. Just as the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet ball, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was reclining, and the king exclaimed, "Will he even molest the queen while she is with me in the house?" As soon as the word left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs attending the king, said, "A pole reaching to a height of 50 cubits stands by Haman's house. He had it set up for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king. The king said, 'Impale him on it.' So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai. Then the king's fury subsided." Okay. Was King Xerxes making sound decisions at this point? Yay?
Okay.
Nay? You think? I think he's in a fit of rage. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, he's still acting out of rage. Seeing Haman on the couch where Esther was what he needed. If he was struggling in his mind, what do I do with Haman? That gave him
That
the
was
answer,
over. Yeah.
right? So, but once again, he allows things to push his decision. I mean, his emotions, whatever is currently going on. So a sound decision, I don't.
Yeah, he's more of a reactor anyhow. He's more always being persuaded to do things. But, in his fit of rage, there would have been a better decision for Haman just to run out of there than to do something to incur his wrath. Why was Haman's head covered? Again, the servants here are an interesting part of the sub-story all through Esther. If you want to know what really is going on in the kingdom, the servants know. And they are very quick to react when the king comes in and then makes that declaration of what Haman was doing. They quickly covered his head like he was captured. I mean, this is what you would do with somebody who was getting arrested in the worst way. Why did they do that? Any thoughts, Chris?
I have the same question. We were reading different translations, and one of them says that he was killed immediately,
Oh, interesting.
and then hung on the
Then impaled.
So it's possible that maybe his head wasn't even attached.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, they said they covered his face, that signaled his doom.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he could have, he could have died there.
yeah. If they didn't do it right away, that's what you do when you've captured somebody that's going to the death penalty. So Harbana is one of the servants. We actually get introduced to him, I think, in chapter 1 or chapter 2. How did he know about Haman's pole? I mean, he was like, man, let me give you some more information. In fact, if you ask me, I can tell you everything that's going on in your own house and with your people.
Looked out the window and saw this 75-foot high structure.
Yeah, yeah.
that had been built in the middle of the night, right?
But he also knew who it was for.
Yeah.
I mean, he had the details.
He might have been the guy that went to get him to bring him back to the banquet.
Yeah.
And saw it there and knew it was for Mordecai.
Yeah. Because you could ask somebody, who's that for? Ask another servant, going through the rumors.
Based on Haman's personality, I suspect he was a braggart.
Ah.
He was quiet about it, he was, telling the servants on the slide.
Yeah,
I'm
telling their
the king.
friends.
I have the king's favor, and this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, because he told his own servants to go and build it. He said, and this is for Mordecai.
He did from building it, he went straight to the courtyard, so he probably talked to everybody.
Yeah, look what I'm going to do. Yeah, interesting. How was the fury of the king finally subsided?
The King James Version says, the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will ye force the queen also before me in the house? And as the word went out of the king's mouth, it covered Haman's face. So I think it was that, look, he's even going to molest my wife.
Okay. And then he knew who the culprit was, right? If he was wondering, that was mentioned before, if he was wondering, who can I trust? Absolutely, he knew he could trust Esther, especially since she was, associated with Mordecai, and he knew he could trust him. And therefore, I finally got the mole out of my own group, in my inner circle, find out who I can trust, okay? That is all I have this morning. Any final comments? I wanted a whole section on lessons learned, but it just didn't happen in my life yesterday. But does anybody have any thoughts to finish us up this morning?
I always try to figure out how this relates to my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking of when Xerxes signed the edict, it probably did seem like a good idea. We talked about, okay, so we're decreasing the population that I have to worry about in my kingdom. And all that plunder is being shared amongst all the rest. So there's room for growth. My people are happier. They're more loyal to me. Oh, but I didn't mean it to affect you.
Yeah.
My queen, my neighbor, my co-worker. It
Mhm.
wasn't. So when we vote, when our lawmakers make laws, whatever we do, we have to think, how does this affect my neighbor? Because on the surface, it might seem like a really good idea. This benefits many people.
Mhm.
But I didn't mean it to affect you.
Yeah, the consequences.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good.
Yeah, that's an amazing thought, and I've thought about that a couple of times over the last year or two. about a group of people, and we believe about them what we're told and what we kind of see. But when that group is narrowed down to an individual we know, then that changes.
That changes, yeah.
Suddenly we're like, well, wait a minute, you're not like what my perception was based on news reports or whatever.
Right.
And I think it's a valuable, important thing. We have to think about people as individuals. That's the way God thinks about us. He doesn't think about us as a group. I mean, I'm sure he does.
The church, right?
But he's thinking about us individually and the value each of us have.
Nice. Great. Okay, we will be back next week for chapter 8, and have a blessed week. Thank you.